What was the most intense experience of your life? I spent some time cleaning up bodies kind like sunshine cleaners. There was this one house. Going into the house smelled unusually normal and there wasn't signs of decay anywhere which was unusual. Then we got to the bedroom. The guy had used plastic sheets to wall off his whole room so when he killed himself it wouldn't affect the house. It got worse from there cause he tried to use a towel to keep the gunshot contained and it basically made it into a cannon. The plastic was sealed pretty well, so I was able to suit up and get my mask on before going in. Even without the smell the first sight, after pulling back the plastic was the most intense experience I think I will ever have. First, a little backstory. I have spinal muscular atrophy, SMA, a genetic disease that slowly wastes away your motor neurons. I have never walked and use a wheelchair to get around. About a year ago, the first ever treatment for SMA, Spinraza, was fast-tracked by the FDA out of the trial phase and made available to the public. The most intense experience of my life has to be laying on a hospital bed, receiving my first dose of the drug and feeling a deep sense of hope for the first time in a very long time. Thank you all so much for your support and words of encouragement. I really appreciate it. You all just made my day edit2. Thank you very, very much for the gold. Finding out that I had unknowingly been friends with my birth father for years update. Check my comment below for the short version of the story. Maybe I'll write a book someday. Retrieving my friend's personal belongings from the car he died in. It was summer, and everything was absolutely soaked in his blood. We'd been friends since childhood, and the remaining members of our group of friends, including his sister, sat in numb silence as we drove the hour-long trip back with the few everyday items we'd managed to retrieve. We left most of it there. My partner works at an auto body shop scrapyard, and he told me that kind of thing is always the worst. Even if the car is completely destroyed. They have to tow it to the lot and then try to pull any personal belongings out of the vehicle for the family to pick up. They can't really clean anything, so it's an as-is situation. Counter-terrorist operation in Tbilisi, Georgia a few weeks ago happened in the building where I live. 16 hours of random explosions and gunshots while waiting to be evacuated from the building. Warning, long post woke up for work about 6 months ago and my leg was numb tingly like I slept on it wrong and it was asleep. Got up and tried to walk it off and get the blood flowing while I got ready for work. Did that for about an hour with no change. By this time I was feeling really strange. Started discharging whatever was in my stomach guts explosively from both ends. Meanwhile, my leg has steadily started to swell and become very painful, even though it was still sleeping. Call my boss and tell him what's going on and that I need to take a personal day. He tells me that I sound very strange and to go see a doctor. By this time my leg is swollen so big that it feels like my skin would split. Muscles are contracting to the point my leg is rock hard I can't even bend my knee. Drag myself on my stomach to the bathroom to evacuate whatever is left inside me. I consider trying to sleep it off, but I'm feeling so horrible that I call 911. By the time they arrive, I'm barely conscious. They rush me to the hospital, where they determine blood flow has somehow stopped reaching my lower leg, under my knee. Also, I'm in double kidney failure. Doctors are stumped. They life-flight me to Pittsburgh UPMC. I'm rushed to surgery, where they split my leg from my crotch to ankle on the inner side and waist to ankle on the outer side in order to relieve the pressure from swelling. Meanwhile my muscles are contracting so bad I thought they would snap my leg bones. One of the most painful feelings I've ever felt. All the while the docs are frantically trying to fix my kidneys. I was laying in that bed slowly dying. Apparently the circulation was cut off to my leg as I slept, causing the calf muscle to die. When that happens, the muscles release lots of chemicals toxins. My problem was it released a massive amount of potassium and my kidneys couldn't handle it. Finally the surgeons tell me that they will have to go in and remove the dead tissue, but there is a small chance they may have to remove some of my leg. Well, when I wake from the anesthesia, I can tell something's not right. I look down to see that my left leg is gone from about 3 inches above the knee. Talk about intense. I've gone from working 60+ hours a week to disabled and sitting at home. Talk about a life changer TLDR. I woke up one morning with a numb tingly leg and 12 hours later it was amputated. P.S. I will be getting the newest, state-of-the-art prosthetic knee leg ankle foot, Rio knee, on December 14th. I can't wait to walk again update. I went today for a final fitting for my new leg. Here's a picture. Rio leg and ankle foot, https://imgur. Gallery JFDC9. Had my tonsils out when I was a kid. Was living with my dad at the time. But one particular night a couple days after, I really wanted to take a bath and my mom had a big tub, so I went one night to stay with her for a few days. The next morning, my throat started bleeding heavily. Well, my stepdad worked second shift, so he was home and drove me to the hospital. Wound up serving a vein before I got there. Was violently vomiting blood. They had to stick a hot iron down my throat to stop the blood. Lost 4 pints total. Had 3 transfusions. Said if I was at my dad's and home alone, I probably wouldn't have made it. Was less than awesome. I got a call from a school friend at 2 a.m. once after he had his tonsils out. The roommates were all drunk and he knew I didn't really drink and needed a lift to the hospital. I remember going inside to get him and seeing the bathroom covered in blood from him swallowing and then throwing up blood all over the place. Very scary. Drove him straight to the hospital and all was fine. Very scary. When I was in 3rd grade, my family lived on the 2nd floor of an apartment complex. My sister was 10 years older than me and she and I used to roughhouse a lot. She was bigger and stronger than me and I was a very scrawny kid. But I loved fighting with her. It was fun. So, one day we were fighting and I decided to use my super secret finishing move, the running headbutt. So, I bent over and charged her like a baby bull. She stopped me, stabbed me and threw me behind her. She totally forgot that the only thing behind her was the window. I broke the window and nearly fell out, except that my sister caught me. I remember hanging from the window with nothing except my sister standing in between me and a very painful fall. She managed to pull me back up and despite the fact that I broke the window and that I was supposedly on top of shard of glass, I did not have a single injury on me. Not a cut. Nothing. It was intense. She was so sorry that she made me some popcorn, bought me a soda and we sat down and watched Brother Bear, first time we saw it, together. One of my classmates was outside when it happened and she told my other classmates how I was screaming my head off during the incident. Fun day. Having a doctor who assumed someone had spoken to me about it have a glance at my chart when I was in the hospital for low red blood counts and say to me, well, you have cancer, so that's probably when no one had said anything to me about cancer. Everyone kept telling me my bone marrow biopsy was inconclusive because of poor quality. That was how I found out. The careless, offhand, well, a sort of comment. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. The rush of emotions I felt was unlike anything I've felt before or since. Edit. I'm doing okay given the circumstances. I'm starting my 3rd phase of treatment and my doctors are very pleased with how I'm doing. No infections or illnesses due to my lowered immune system. And got a 0. 0 on my first minimal residual disease test, which is great. The doctor didn't really react much at all. She stood there awkwardly while myself and my family members freaked out. And during a period of quiet, said she assumed I knew. And wandered off. I never saw her again and was treated by another doctor. I was staying at my ex-girlfriend's place one night a few years back. I'll try to keep this short. It was in an apartment complex and we were lying in front of the TV when all of a sudden these blood-curdling screams came from the floor above us. Not only screams but glass breaking. I ran upstairs to see what was going on and saw a guy with a gun breaking down her front door. When he saw me, he pointed the gun at me, so I ducked back into the stairwell and ran back to the apartment to call the cops. I locked our door just in case. As we were waiting for the cops to show up, the screams were coming from outside. Downstairs this time. I ran to the balcony, we were on the 2nd floor, and I saw a woman running with a guy giving chase. I ran downstairs to help. I guess there was more fight than flight, and as I came around the corner he shot her twice right in front of me and turned the gun on himself. He died right there on the sidewalk. Unfortunately. She survived that terrible fucking ordeal. I still think about it every week. The LDR guy shot a woman in front of me then killed himself. Had my keys stolen, which started a mini riot at the max security juvenile detention center I worked at. My mom called me as her suicide note. I live 16 hours away and had to talk to her after she took 2 months worth of strong painkillers and prescription sleep aids. She had driven her car to an abandoned parking lot and had no idea where she was. She couldn't answer any of my questions about how much she took, how long ago she arrived there. But I kept talking to her until suddenly there was just silence on the other end of the phone. I thought she died. Right there on the phone with me. I thought my mother had died. Luckily my husband called my grandpa who lives near her, and because they share the same wireless plan, the customer service agent walked him through pinging her phone and getting her location. My sister rushed there. Just beating the ambulance and they were able to save my mother's life. She was in a coma for about a week and is only now getting her life back together. She's had to make big changes to her life that unfortunately she's not financially able to do, but she's trying hard and I'm proud of her. But my God, that moment on the phone when I was screaming for my mother and there was no response still haunts me and my husband. He says I fell to the floor wailing and he had to take me to the couch, but all I remember is the terrible heartache. I was working on a container ship going from West Coast US to Japan. We got stuck in between two low-pressure systems for 3 days. I experienced seas 40 to 60 feet. Never in my life have ever felt so small. My best friend, he was my cousin, may as well have been my brother, got hit by a bus in London whilst listening to music on his iPod a couple of years ago, and the bus driver essentially crushed him to death under the front left wheel by lowering the passenger platform instead of raising it. I was at work and I got a call to get to London ASAP, and to see half of his skull caved in and subsequently watch him die was the most intense and harrowing experience of my life. I watched my mother die from the big C years before that, but this was different level. Fuck, I miss you, Dave. His username was @GRAVEY727. Always makes me cry reading through his comments. Edit, if anyone wants to see him, please Google David Wood, Farrington. I grew up in the same village of him, and our mums were sisters. He was essentially my brother and we were always inseparable. He donated 3 of his organs when he passed to save lives, and his accident occurred on the day after he got his dream job in St. Bart's Hospital in London. As a radiographer. He was walking to meet his girlfriend for lunch. We did everything together and he was a week away from proposing to his girlfriend of 7 years. He's buried next to my mum, so my 2 bestest friends are keeping each other company. He was truly an incredible guy and I miss him so much. The outpouring of love has been overwhelming. Thank you. I really needed it. Meningitis. Pain so intense you have a moment of panic just before each heartbeat because you know how bad your head will hurt during it. Only time I've experienced fever hallucinations. Eyes open I was in the hospital. Eyes closed I was somewhere else. Other times eyes closed I could still see the hospital room, but there was a girl with short hair sitting in a chair watching me. They didn't want to give me a Foley bag for whatever reason, so every time I went to the bathroom, which was a lot with the IV, I would spend the next 5 minutes dry heaving into a cardboard bowl, which in turn did wonders for the headache. When I could finally eat again after 6 days, that hospital turkey sandwich was the most delicious thing. Nurses later told my wife they didn't think I was going to make it through first night. But times. Meningitis is a bitch. When I finally got taken to the hospital my kidneys had failed, my liver was failing, lungs were failing, and heart was defibrillating. I had been sick and feverishly hallucinating for 3 days in a hotel room while on a business trip. On the 3rd day I managed to somehow call a gal I had met and ask her to bring me some soup. She took one look at me and said I needed to go to the ER. Last thing I remember is shitting myself and going down as they were walking me to the closest bed. My light went out and I touched the darkness. Had I not made that call, I would have died for good that night. When I came to it felt like I had been hit by a truck. The slightest brush against my skin was as intense as a broken leg. I could barely move and still wasn't stable enough for anything to moderate the pain. I laid there and groaned for a week while nurses changed my piss bag and wiped my ass. I didn't lose any limbs or have any permanent damage. But the hardest part of the whole thing was coming back from the void. It took years for me to get over the longing. That incident completely stripped the fear of death from me. Discovering that my quiet and chilled out 6-day-old baby girl was actually dying and needed emergency open heart surgery. Her condition had not been picked up and we were blissfully unaware. I'll always be so grateful to the health visitor who came to see us on day 6 and expressed her concerns. Even then, we were expecting a wasted trip to the hospital. Ended up in the front of an ambulance stopping traffic. She's 2 now and full of beans. So I'm a type 1 diabetic. About 6 months ago, I forgot to test my blood sugar levels before going to bed. I woke up 6 hours later, keenly aware something was wrong, but I wasn't quite sure what was wrong. I jumped out of bed and stumbled, literally stumbling, to the kitchen and desperately tried to eat something. By the time I had reached the kitchen, my blood sugar was so low that my consciousness began to recede. And I could feel it fading. I remember trying to make French fries because the pantry was empty, but in my barely conscious state I put them in the toaster instead of the oven. My last memory before I lost consciousness is being frustrated upon remembering fries do not go in the toaster and trying to pull them out. Thank God it was unplugged. Luckily I still lived with my parents, who woke up while I was unconscious and found me try to get ice cream to eat, but being unable to get it or form a sentence. Thankfully, they got my blood sugar up and sat me down on the couch and regained consciousness. I still remember the loss of control though, and it is intensely terrifying, even as a memory. My friend is a type 1 diabetic. One night we went to a party. He was our DD for the night, and I was shit-faced. I vividly remember seeing him out of the corner of my eye sinking down into a chair and fumbling for his glucose meter. The next minute was the most calm and focused I have ever felt in my life. I went to him, told him I'd be right back. Weaved down and through a staircase and living room full of drunk people, and then I remember pouring every kind of juice I saw into a red Solo cup. I got it back to him, he drank it, thanked me, and I don't remember the rest of the night. Didn't hit me until the next day how important that was. Edit, what the shit, I replied to this comment so late, how did anyone see this, let alone gilded? For real though, thank you so much. My gold cherry has been popped.